I'm underneath the transmission. Here's our little inspection hole, and this right here is the clutch lever, and I'm taking the bolt out of that so I can get that clutch lever off of there. And I got one more bolt right up here that I'm pointing at on the bell housing that holds the bracket on. And my goal is to get all the bolts out that are holding a bracket on before I put the transmission jack on. And then when I put the transmission jack on, then I've only got a couple of more bolts left on the bottom to take off. And then I have to go up on top. Once the transmission is well supported with the jack, then I got to go on top and take that transmission mount off the top of the transmission. I'm ready to start lifting. I got the jack under here. And in my case, I just got to tighten this valve. I'm not telling anybody how to run a jack there. If you can't run a jack, you shouldn't be trying to change a clutch. I turn the camera off for a minute, but I'm going to position these locks here whatever best way seems to be right. I'm not going to wrap a chain around the top of it. That's kind of pointless, but I am going to fit this thing fit this platform to the transmission as best as I can. I might shim it up with blocks of wood. I might just make adjustments on these things, whatever it takes to be what appears to be safe and secure, so that we can raise this thing up and back it out of there. I got the jack pretty close to where I think I'm going to use it. I got this back end. It's got a real wide flat spot, and I'm just going to go on ahead and use that. And we got the same thing in the front. It's hard to get the camera there as usual, but it's there. I can see it. Got a flat spot up there. I'm just going to tilt it back just a little bit with this adjusting rod here, so that they both pick up at the same time, at the same level. And if I have to turn the angle a little bit, I can do that too. I can angle it left and right as well as back and forward. Well, I'm going to go ahead and make those adjustments and get this thing to fit, because the closer it is to fitting right on the bottom of the transmission when I lift it, then the easier it's going to be to put the transmission back in, because the truck is not going to move. I dearly hope not. The truck's not going to move, the motor's not going to move, all that's going to be in the right place. So when the transmission jack gets rolled back up here to put it back together, hopefully we won't have to make any adjustments or fight with it too much to get it back in place. I have all my bell housing bolts out all the way around. We're supported on the jack. When I pulled the last bolt off the bottom, it actually split apart slightly because the back end is being pushed up with the jack. So now I have to go up on top in that hole in the transmission shifter and take those two big bolts out of the rear mount up there. I went on top and I took those two big bolts out that hold that upper transmission mount, and I looked around and trying to find anything else that might be in the way or something I didn't take off, and I didn't find anything that I didn't take off. There was some hoses that were on that bracket that is on top of the that big spring for that rear mount, and they were kind of awkward and in the way, so I wrapped a piece of wire, piece of Romax from my electrical junk, around that and pulled it up through the transmission or through the shifter hole and tied it onto the steering wheel to kind of help hold it up out of the way. So that big spring is loose now. It's laying up there crooked. I'm going to pull it down and get it out of the way, and then I'll start lowering the transmission. I need to see if the gap is about the same on the top and the bottom and on both sides. And it looks pretty close, but the wheels are kind of facing the wrong direction to roll very easily. So I'm going to find a little block of wood and push it in there. Well, maybe I can use the screwdriver handle. No, it's not quite. I got to find something else to wedge in there. It appears I needed to just lower it down a little bit because I am moving downhill slightly on my way back. I just lowered it slightly again. Well, we should be out of there, but I think we might be hanging up on a hose or a tube or wire or something. I don't know what. I'm going to look around and see what it is. Now we can come down. Now that we got this input shaft out of the clutch and the clutch bearing, now we can start lowering it down. Little at a time. Now I gotta crawl around on top and see if there's anything getting hung up. Everything seems to be free. Okay, we got the transmission down. That's it, it's down. Roll it out of the way and start taking the clutch off. I got my clutch jack under here and almost in position. And I'm going to continue to raise it up and slide it forward. And I may have to rotate the clutch slightly to get the splines to line up. I don't know how much more I'm going to do tonight. The light's starting to get dim outside. And I don't want to drag a bunch of lights under here. I might though. Anyway, I got this in there tight all the way up against it. Now all I got to do is take these pressure plate bolts off all the way around and then come back off with it. There's my clutch. Got it off and it's up there on this jack. So now I gotta take it apart on the jack and take it off it so I can get the jack back out of here, because the jack can only pass through here in one place without the clutch on it. Now we got to take the flywheel down, and I can use this jack for that too. Just put the point of that input shaft there, put the point of that in the pilot bearing right there. But first I got to take all those bolts out, at least all the bolts around the bottom half of it. And there's the flywheel. This new jack makes it pretty nice to clean the flywheel too. I gotta clean the flywheel, of course, because of the rear main seal. For those that are watching this for the clutch replacement only, had to do a rear main seal and got grease and gunk all over this flywheel and all over the bell housing. It was a mess. I got the flywheel pretty well cleaned up, as clean as I'm going to clean it, and I'm going to take the bearing off and replace that. That's the pilot bearing. And the easiest way to do that is to take the flywheel off, which is always a good idea when you're doing a clutch, because you want to, if you don't resurface your flywheel, at least you can check your rear main seal and make sure it's not leaking. Now I want to weigh this thing. I got a bass scale set up with a little board laying across it. I'm going to weigh this flywheel and get an idea of what that thing weighs. I know it's a good 80 pounds. It might be 100 or better. We'll see here in just a second. Looks like it is weighing about 95. Now to replace the pilot bearing, you can just knock it out of there with a hammer if you want. Since I'm not going to reuse it again. Very simple. But the new one, we're not going to do it quite the same way. We'll kind of get it started tapping on it slowly. You can continue to go on in with it like that, as long as it's in there square. It's a little high over here. Put a socket on it that fits the outer race. You don't want to hammer on the inner race, puts a strain on the balls inside of it. Feel underneath and see, is it flush over there? Pretty close. That's good. Well, I'm ready to put this flywheel back up there. And it is a little heavy. So I'm going to use the lift, and I'm going to put a little dab of grease on the point of the thing right here. In fact, I'm going to go on ahead and grease up these splines, because when it's time for the clutch, that'll help. Got it in position on there and on its way up. It is bolted down. I'm going to take some brake cleaner and wipe off the surface of the clutch where the clutch goes on it. A couple of minor rust spots from when a drip of water fell on it since yesterday. But that's nothing. Clutch will wipe those off real quick. Now I'm going to go ahead and assemble the clutch and put that on here too. Now when I tighten these down, you know-it-alls are going to like this one, so listen. I snugged two of them down with the impact crossways from each other, and then when they were finally pretty well seated, then I started going to the next one, and then crossover, and then like this, back and forth all the way down. And I let the impact hammer about 1 second after they seated, because bolts that size are probably going to torque in the neighborhood of 110, 120 pounds, somewhere in that neighborhood. You don't want them on there too awful tight. So a high-powered half-inch impact, letting it seat and then go about 1 second more is more than enough. So I'm not going to put a torque wrench on it, but it's my truck. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and do the clutch now.